Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Monday, July 7th, about 9:45 at night, Eastern Standard Time. Sorry for such a late start. My kids had a swim meet, and then we had to go celebrate with Rita's Water Ice afterwards. So getting home pretty late to get this started. Try to get through it as quick as I can so I can put it out and then go to bed. I probably will not stay up in the live chat tonight. All right, but this is the video, for the YieldMax weekly paying dividend funds. First, ULTY, the Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund, and then LFGY, the Crypto Industry and Tech Portfolio Option Income Fund. Before we start looking at the numbers, a reminder, I'm on X, formerly Twitter, at ETF_Inspector1, where I announce things like, hey, big news, I just picked up new coverage. I'm now covering Roundhill 0 DTE funds, QDTE, XDTE, and RDTE. So if you are into any of those, I've had XDTE and QDTE for some time now in my 401k, not in my trading account. But similar to, not necessarily, sort of similar in that they're a cover call strategy to make the income and weekly paying, but then these guys are selling options on the same day and just basically trying to make a win on individual days. So check out that video. It's uploaded now. It's actually premiering pretty much right now while we speak, but I can't be in that because I got to make this video for you guys. So as we take a look, it was a pretty red day. ULTY went down about 0.5% to 625, and then we got a handful of greens sprinkled in, but it's almost all, or a lot of red, and especially LFGY, whole lot of red. Okay, we'll look at individual ones within it. Oof, and now that I think of that, I think I forgot to update some colors on this, but that's okay, we'll get through it. So we will start with ULTY. And then just take a look, right? We downloaded the intraday trades sometime after 5:30 p.m. today. ULTY had around 80 trades that I had to input and crunch the numbers on, and then LFGY only had about 36 or so. So not terrible. We'll get through it. All right, we'll start with ULTY first, and we'd like to start with the trades first. So let's go there. Okay, in general, spent some money buying into a lot of the underlyings that we already hold, but we did add a new one. If you saw in the thumbnail, Applied Optoelectronics Incorporated. I've never heard of them. AAOI is their stock ticker, but we started with 750,000 shares of them, so we put about $20 million into them. We came up with that money by selling about $20 million worth of Tesla. So we still have Tesla, but just a good bit less than we used to. And then the rest of the money is coming from more people buying into the fund, putting that money to work. I think it was around 59 million. So we'll probably see an increase in shares tomorrow. All right, so as we go through, since we bought a new stock, we can start a new collar strategy on them. ULTY does a collar strategy, so that's where they buy the shares, then they sell a call out of the money to generate income, and they buy a put out of the money on the low side to protect the share price of the actual stocks they hold. So this way, if the stock trades sideways, they get to generate the income from the calls. If the stock goes up beyond the calls, you might lose money on the covered call strategy, but you'll end up increasing the value of the fund because you actually own the shares. And if it goes down, the puts increase in value, so when you sell them, that offsets the decrease in value of the fund. So that protects, that's what's helping. That's why ULTY doesn't have NAV erosion anymore. All right, so AAOI, they chose let me just take a quick peek since I don't know the stock. 26-ish range. So those are $29 and $30 calls for this week, and collected 52 and 70 cents. And they bought puts at the $23 and $24 range, and that's after the stock dropped around 7.5% today to get to that 26 range. So we collected $225,000. That's realized, right? We actually sold something and collected that money. Next, we're going to see a handful of these where it's just buying more puts and selling more calls. That's just to go along with the new shares that they just purchased, right? So we're just adding on to the position we already have. So $347.50 call sold, $6.60 received, $72,000 profit after also buying the put, the protective put. ASTS, we did a little roll. We closed out our 52s, right? Sorry, I'm a little out of it. Yep. So we closed out our 52s that were expiring this week, and we sold 48s for this week. Paying 23 cents, collecting 69 cents on that. So that was a nice, just taking advantage of it dropping. And then they also sold some more at 48 to go, more calls to go along with the new shares that they purchased. So all in all, profiting $420,000, and that's all after doing the puts as well. I usually won't talk too much about the puts because they're just there for our protection. That's the insurance policy. Coin, just selling some more options to go with the new shares, $71,000 profit. First Solar, what they did is just adjusted down their call strike price. So they had 195 sold. They bought to close them at 68 cents, and they sold 187.50. So they just brought it a little closer to the money, still on the 11th, profiting 68,000. They didn't adjust the protective puts on those. Hood and IonQ, this is just selling more options, more calls to go with the new shares. Collected 21, almost 22,000 and 48,000. LabU doing the same thing as First Solar. We bought to close our 65s at 22 cents, and we sold $60.50 for 92 cents. So a 70-cent difference, 262,000 after you do that price per share, 100 shares per contract, 3,750 contracts. So that's for the 11th still as well. Mara made a couple of moves here, right? So they closed their 1850s and 19s. Oh, let's stick with this. 1850s for the 11th, and they sold 1750s for the 11th, paying 8 cents, collecting 19 cents. So 11-cent different on the profit there. Then closing their 19s for next week and selling 18s for this week. Paying 26, only receiving 16. So we lost 10 cents a share on that, but we got a whole week back. So we'll be able to sell these again for next week. So it should work out unless Mara goes way up past these. And then there was actually even some more shares, I think. Let's see. Nope, that's it. There was no additional shares on that. 371,000 total on that move. MicroStrategy, Oklo, Palantir, and Reddit all just selling more options to go with the new shares. 33,000, 72,000, 43,000, and 60,000 profit. Rigetti closing out the $12 strikes for this week and selling 1450s for next week, and then selling some more to go along with the new shares purchased. All in all, cost $703,000. So that one's a loss. Rigetti kind of went up through. That's why they closed 12s and sold 1450. So the stock price went up too much, too fast. RH, they just added to the position that they have. So they don't actually own shares of RH. They just have this debit spread. So they bought some more of the 180s and they sold some more 202.50s. $322,000 loss on that one. But it's a loss, but it's more of like an investment, right? Because in a debit spread, you spend the most amount of money that you can possibly lose on the front end, and then when you close it out, you see how much you made. Whereas when you do like a credit spread, or when you're selling a call out of the money, you just collected the most you can possibly make, but then as it goes up, you could actually lose money. So it's a little bit backwards from the rest of the strategy. SMCI, SMR and TEM all selling more options to go with their new shares, $52,000, $26,000, and $22,000 profit. Tesla, this is just closing out the options that went along with the shares that we sold. $41,000 loss on that. Upstart selling more options to go with the new shares purchased, $49,000 profit. And then VRT and VST, similar to RH, have debit call spreads, so they bought some more of the 115s for VRT and the 170s for VST, and they sold some more 129s and 197.50s, losing $312,000 and $433,000. Well, I'll call that spending, not losing, because that's an investment. We're gonna find out at the end how much we make on that one. It's a little bit different. Sorry if it's confusing. So all of that totals up to a profitable day of $110,000. So that's not bad, especially when you factor in spending $400,000, $300,000, and $300,000 on things where that's the investment side of it, and then we're going to make the money on the back end. So even with taking that $1 million loss on the day, we still profited $110,000. As you can see, and as you obviously would assume with all the red, we went down today, decreased by $6 million. We'll take a look. If you didn't see the estimate video on the weekend, IV estimate comes out to about 8.69 cents. I'm guessing it's going to be a little over 9. Maybe I'm too high with 9.25, but that's just a guess. All right, as we run through these stocks within the ULTY fund. There we go. Okay, AMD. There is no shares. It's just a put spread here. It went down 2.26%, which actually helped, but no, it didn't help. Took these further in the money. So they're 2.3 and 3.8% in the money on the sold calls. When you sell an option, you want it to end out of the money. So I've got color coding here. In the money's red. That's bad. Yellow is out of the money but close, less than 5%, and green is greater than 5% out of the money. When you sell an option, whether it's a call or a put, you want it to end out of the money so it's worthless. So you sell it while it has value. At the end, if it's worthless, you just got to keep the money. If it becomes more valuable, you have to buy it back because you sold it, and you sold first, so everything's got to come back to zero. So if it goes in the money, it's going to cost more money to close out. So we don't want the puts to drop, the percentage there. I feel like I'm fumbling words. Let's just keep moving. AppLovin went up about 1% to 345. That took their 342.50s, 0.72% in the money, and their 347.50s are 0.72% out of the money, right dead in the middle. They didn't do anything with these, so they're just going to let some time tick by. They're still pricey to close out for now. There's a chance it comes back a little, and at the same time, right, if it goes all the way to expiration at 345, that's $2.50 in the money, so it's roughly what you'd pay to close it, so you don't want to close it for $9.85. You can see next to each stock how much it increased the market value based on it going up. We won't read each line. I'll just show you at the bottom, but, spoiler alert, you already saw it. It's $6 million loss. AST Space Mobile up 0.2% to 45.69. They've got 51s for this week that are 11.6% out of the money, and we talked about it. They closed and rolled these 52s, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. Anytime you've got orange over here, that is from the trades we just talked about. So those positions, we don't own them anymore. The holdings information comes out the following morning. So tomorrow morning, I download that and I update everything on this side of the page. All right, Coinbase up 0.37% to 357.10. They've got 362.50 calls that are still 1.5% out of the money, expiring Friday. First Solar dropped 4.3%. They rolled the farther out of the money 195s, but they still have 192.50s that they're going to let some time decay off of, 8.7% out of the money. Robinhood down 1% to 93.46. bringing those 95s 1.6% out of the money, and the 100 call strike price 7% out of the money. Ion Q up 1.82%. Wasn't sure what they were going to do today. I don't know if you follow them. They're one of my favorites. The only reason I know this, but they're doing a rights offering. So sometimes a lot of times that dilutes the stock and brings it down, but the price that they're offering at is well above the current price. So that's what helped, I'm assuming. But anyway, their 44s and 4450s are 2.6 and 1.5% out of the money, looking at 9,500 contracts between the two of those strike prices. LabU, the triple leveraged biotech fund, dropped 5.74%. They went ahead and rolled these to a closer to the money strike price to collect some more money there. Mara Holdings down 5.15%. So the two strikes that were further out of the money, 1850 and 19, they went ahead and rolled. They left the 1750s to continue to decay. They're 4.5% out of the money. MicroStrategy down a little over 2% to 395.67. They've got 410s and 415s. They're 3.6 and 4.8% out of the money. Oklo was up 4.1%. Their 5750s got a little closer to the money, but they're still 2.7% away. And the 5950s are, call it safely, 6.3% away. Now that I said that, they'll go up 10% tomorrow. Palantir lost 3.5%. But they are still, so we started the week pretty deep in the money, which we don't normally do. So, or no, we didn't. They didn't go down. They went up 3.5%. So they were basically just out of the money and just in the money. And now they're 3.6 and 2.9% in the money on those 134s and 135s. I wonder if the audio came through. My dog just went running across the house. That's what that noise was if you heard something. Reddit lost 2.3% to 153.37. They have 170s sold that are 10.8% out of the money. Rigetti up almost 2.25%, 75. Yeah, these were the ones that they started the week well in the money, 10% in the money, and then went even further. So they rolled these, but this was not a win. That was a loss. They still have 11, almost 12,000 contracts at 1350 that are 1.8% in the money, and another 8,000 contracts that are at 14, 1.82% out of the money. Okay, RH. This is one where we just have a spread. Let's see, we bought the 180s, we sold the 202.50s and the 215s. So this is a debit call spread. So we watched this one here because the 180s, what we're making money on, they went down 4% today. So that didn't help. We liked it higher because the higher the higher the price goes, the more in the money the 180 goes, the more money we're going to make on the back end when we close that out. Now we are capped though, because for most of the shares, once we break 202.50, these will go deeper to the loss as fast as these go deeper to the positive or further to the positive. SMCI lost about 3% to 47.11. That takes their 49s 4% out of the money and their 52s 10% out of the money. There's 2,900 and 4,200 contracts there. SMR up 2.29% to 36.70. Their $40 calls are almost 9% out of the money. Tempest AI lost 4.85% to 58.01. They have $66 calls that are 13.7% out of the money. Getting near the end. TQQQ, triple leverage, ultra pro shares, ultra pro QQQ, lost almost 2.25%. 82.92 was the closing price. They've got 86s and 87s that are 3.7 and 4.9% out of the money. Sorry, I'm trying to move fast. I want to go to bed. Tesla got beat up today. I sold puts on TSLL after that big drop this morning. So we'll see how that works out. I've been watching too much Retire on Dividends. 6.79% decrease to 293.94. They closed out their 312.50s and rolled them, and they closed out their 327.50s and rolled them, but they left their 315s for now. So generally they close the further out of the money ones and leave the closer ones. So I don't have enough time to dig and figure out what the deal was with that. So they still have 315s. They're 7.1% out of the money. All right, Upstart up 3.43% to 76.35. So they were slightly out of the money before today started, and then they went 3% into the money during the trading day. We would like them to drop back down to 74. So this almost $2 million bill we've got can drop down to nothing. Finally, the last two, VRT and VST, we don't own shares in them anymore. We just have debit spreads similar to RH. So 115 is where we purchase the call. Everywhere, as much as it goes above that helps, up until 129 when it starts going 1 for 1. So it's at 126. So it could still go $3 to the positive before we're maxed out on the most money we can make. So it's doing well. And then VST has 170 as the call and 197 as the sold call above it. So we've still got almost $4 of room to run for this one after going up 0.78% today. So both of these are doing well. They're in the money, but they need to go up for the value to not decay away from time value. All right, so we were at 850 million when the day started. I would assume there was an increase in outstanding shares. We'll find that out tomorrow with the download. So it dropped roughly 6 million today on value, but if they sold more shares, it's going to go up. I think we got a chance of breaking $1 billion this week. Some people were saying they think Palladi's going to get to $1 billion first. I say ULTY gets there first. Maybe I am biased though. All right, price at close was $6.25. That's it for ULTY. We'll get through LFGY a lot quicker. I don't know why I did that. Okay, for some reason, LFGY is just a quicker one to get through. All right, so starting off on the trades, they did not take my advice after 2 weeks in a row of losing money on Circle Internet Group. They bought in, and they're ready to start trading options on them. They bought 25,100 shares. When it's the stock itself, this is actually a share column, and then when it's options, it becomes the contracts column. The difference is I just don't multiply these by 100 because that's just shares. When it's a contract, every contract's worth 100 shares. All right, so they bought that, and they sold out of Tesla. So if you saw, there was a line through Tesla on the LFGY side of the thumbnail. We're done with Tesla, so sad day. Odd to sell them after a big loss day, but anyway, they do a whole lot of very small moves, so we don't cover them line by line, right? When we're talking about hundreds of millions, we don't care about $100. Sometimes there's been like $3 trades in here, so I will just highlight the bigger ones. When we bought Circle Internet Group, we sold 251 contracts for calls at $227.50. All right, we bought at $202.97. We collected $3.32 per share, 100 shares per contract, 251 contracts. That came out to a profit of $83,000. The rest of this is just a lot of little tiny moves, selling, fractions of what they actually have already. So we don't try to sit there and maintain those. We just make the full swap once they've sold all the shares. So I don't go through them line by line. The only other one that was a full change was Tesla, because we closed out and sold all our shares. We had to close out all our options that were going along with them. So we took a $12,000 loss on that closeout. When we total up all the options trades for the day, they profited $146,000 on the trading day. And if you didn't see the guesstimate video on Sunday, we said based on the IV that it was roughly 49, almost 50 cent distribution. I went ahead and upped it. I say 50 cents is what they're going to pay. But we will find out on Wednesday. They lost money trading, so when that's the case, or when it's not enough to be the distribution, they defer to the IV, and then sometimes they try to give us a little extra based on how well the fund did, the fund price, if it went up or down. So that's just my guess. 50 cents LFGY. That'll be a nice payday if we get it. All right, when we go through, there's probably half as many stocks within this fund, so we can get through it quicker. BitDeer lost 4.68% to 1313. They are 14% out of the money on those calls. They expire on Friday. CleanSpark lost 7.5% to 1133, dropping their calls to 10.3% out of the money for 1250. Coinbase up 0.37%, still slightly out of the money. 360 is the strike price on the calls. 357.10 was the closing price. Core Scientific had a rough day. 17.6% to the negative. 1483 was the closing price. Those $19 calls are now 28% out of the money. Surprised they didn't close those out. We'll probably see that happen early this week. Galaxy Digital down 9.5% to 1969. So again, they're 21% out of the money on these 24s expiring Friday. GameStop down 4.1% to 2262. That's 10.5% out of the money on those 25s. Robinhood lost 1% to 93.46. 12.35% out of the money on those 105. So we've got a lot of potential wins stacking up for the week that we can buy to close and roll and get more time value on the next one that we sell. HUD 8 Corp down 3.2% to 2120. That brings their 23s 8.5% out of the money. iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF lost 1.27%. 6140. There's no options on those, so we just own the shares and they go up or down in value. Mara Holdings lost 5.15% to 1675. We actually needed that because we started the week with these 16s that were 9, almost 10% in the money. So now they're 4.5% in the money. We actually need another down day to win those trades. And then MBTX is here. They don't own shares of them. That's why we don't have a gray line. So we just have two spreads, a call spread, a credit call spread. So they sold at 260. They're 1.67% out of the money at 255.73. And then they have a a debit put spread, with 230 being the strike that we purchased. So we need the stock to drop below 230 for that to increase in value. And those are out till December 31st. So they are betting that MBTX drops pretty drastically from where it's at, in case you were wondering on making your trades. Mercado Libre lost 0.5% to $2,501.08. Their calls for this week are almost 4% out of the money. MicroStrategy down 2.06%, 395.67. They've got calls at 410 and 412.50. They're 3.6 and 4.2% out of the money. NU Holdings down 1 3/4 to 1336. That's 4.79% out of the money on those 14s. Nvidia lost 0.69% to 158.24. Their 165s are 4.2% out of the money. We can see the bottom. We can see an end coming. Opera down 2.4% to 1950. They've got $20 calls sold. They're 2.5% out of the money. PayPal down 0.5%, 76.18. 2.3 and 3.7% out of the money, but there's only 7 contracts at the 78, so really we just need to win the 79. We can lose the 78 and still make money this week. 7 contracts doesn't really compare to nearly 500. Riot Platforms down a little over 5% to 11.55, bringing their $13 calls 12.5% out of the money. Tesla, we don't really care what they did because they sold their shares. They closed out the options. I guess I technically should have made that orange because we closed those out. And then Block, XYZ, up 0.25% to 69.41. Their calls are still 2.2% out of the money. So all in all, we lost. We didn't lose. We decreased in value, 5,395,000. Does that number match? Yep, 5 million. Sometimes it updates a little bit after I made the copy paste. All right, there's 3.6 million outstanding shares, roughly $100 million managed in the fund. Just doesn't seem like people are buying into this one. ULTY has grown hundreds of millions of dollars in the same time that LFGY has grown about 10 million. So you guys need to buy more shares. So it looks like the NAV and the price at close are way off, but remember, this is all based on holdings, and the holdings download doesn't come out till the next day. So after tomorrow comes out with a $5 million decrease, roughly, when you take 5 million off of 3 million shares, it's going to be more than $1 decrease. So that'll bring them a whole lot closer. And it's not going to be that easy dollar for dollar because there was a profit on the trades, and then there might have been people buying into the fund. So just letting you know, they're not $1 off from each other, 90 cents off. They're always within a couple cents. All right, that's everything I got for you. Really long video. Sorry. I guess it's not 30. We're at the 32-minute mark. I've got a dad joke of the day for you, and I also just wanted to tell you again in case you missed it on the front end. I started coverage on Round Hill weekly paying funds, so similar to ULTY and LFGY and the weekly paying. They're the 0 days to expiration funds, so they make a trade for same day selling calls on the basically the NASDAQ, the S&P, and the Russell 2000. All right, so check those videos out. Share them with people if you know that they've got anything in there. Like I said, I bought into them well before I got into making these videos. So thank you for watching. I appreciate everybody. I get the updates every week with the how many likes and shares, and it's actually surprising me. I never thought it would do this well, let alone this fast. But so I got a dad joke of the day for you. That's your reward for sitting here listening to me babble on for 33 minutes. Why is sand so optimistic? It has a can-do attitude. That one's pretty bad. Can-do, sand dune, can-do. Okay, you guys might have to start writing in like better dad jokes for me because the dad joke calendar's not cutting it sometimes. All right, have a good night, everybody, and good luck trading tomorrow.